Good morning. My name is Paola Schwitzer, and I am a founder and member of the steering committee of Chapter Zero Italy. And I also am honorary president of Net Community, the Italian Association of Non-Executive and Independent Board Members. It's a pleasure and the honor to take part to this Global Summit 2022 and to introduce this session on the climate change challenge in the real estate industry, board responsibility and capacity building in engaging investors and protecting portfolio values. Well, I would like to start with this last point and with good news, actually, because as a member of the steering committee of Chapter Zero Italy, I can really testify that board directors are fully aware of their responsibility and, so to say, their new fiduciary duties relating to climate change governance. They are contributing to address the impact of climate change in terms of risks and opportunities based on consistent scenario analysis, maybe with different emphasis, of course, in different industries, in different sectors, and with a different sense of urgency due to the challenges that every industry is facing. As for the real estate industry, actions need definitely to be implemented more urgently, because the industry, as we know, is among the top world contributors in terms of CO2 emissions, is a top energy consumer, is among the top beneficiaries of sustainability-linked tax incentives, and among the top beneficiaries of the Next Generation EU funding. So undoubtedly, real estate leaders have to play a critical role in the climate transition and in carrying out global climate change mitigation efforts. In other words, as has been said by many, they have a leading role in saving our planet. We are also aware that a mix of economic transition and physical risk has created a significant risk of mispricing real estate across markets and asset classes. But the majority of real estate funds and many companies are not yet enough forward-looking on climate resilience, and so this risk is not fully priced in. The standard valuation models are mainly based on observed changes and thus do not incorporate future risks. Until those risks are better understood, we believe that the ability to create value and outperform the market in a climate change economy will be constrained. We also know that the market actually changes slowly. There are currently $300 trillion of real estate assets worldwide, and only 1 trillion of these is traded each year. So early movers might dispose of their assets with a high climate risk. But this strategy cannot be sustained in the long term without new investments to make assets more resilient. And all this does not only imply new responsibilities for real estate players to both revalue and future-proof their portfolios, but does also bring opportunities to create new sources of value. And boards should not miss to consider these opportunities, along with an appropriate and forward-looking climate risk assessment. Well, today, in this session, we will take a deeper look into all these relevant issues with our distinguished speakers, who I'd like to thank once more for having accepted to be here with us today. And who are Alfredo Romano, Board Advisor, Associate at the Frankfurt School of Finance and Management at the UNEP Collaborating Center for Climate and Sustainable Energy Finance. Raffaele Rizzi, General Counsel of the insurance group Gruppo Assicurativo Poste Vita, an ESG expert and a member of the steering committee of Chapter Zero Italy. And our panelists, Benedetta Conticelli, Managing Director of Prielos and CEO of Land of Fashion Outlet Management, Kelly Russell, Head of Sustainability and Communication and Chairman of the Sustainable Innovation Committee of COIMA SGR, and Maria Buttiglieri, Executive Director at Russell Reynolds Associates. Well, I'm sure that the insights our speakers will share with us will further help us clarify what we as board members could still improve and what challenges we can still expect. So now I'm going to hand over to Alfredo Romano for his keynote speech on challenges and opportunities for the real estate industry. And I wish you all a very useful session. I always would like to remind all the audience that you can ask questions to our speakers via the Q&A button, and we will try to answer them at the end of the session. So enjoy the session, you all. Thank you.
Thank you, Paola. Thank you very much for this introduction, and good morning to everyone. And thank you for this great and valuable opportunity to stay together this morning and share thoughts on these challenging topics that Paola introduced, which is the role of the climate change in the real estate industry and the responsibilities for our boards. I'm going to show and share a presentation. You tell me, Paola, if the presentation is...
It's visible. Please switch it into presentation mode, right? Okay.
Okay. Okay, that's great. So we will look into the challenges and opportunities for the real estate industry in the climate change challenge. A very quick agenda. We will touch together first the context of the climate change in the real estate industry today. We will then move on to the role that we expect the governance play, and which are the responsibilities and complexities that the board has to face. And then we will try to move together from ambition to action. What shall we do to start our journey? We will cover about 20-25 minutes together. So let's start from the context. Paolo already introduced us into the challenge of the climate change. We know that climate change is disrupting the real estate business, causing physical impacts through very extreme weather events. Also the policy and technology changes, which themselves aim to limit the warming and reduce the physical impacts, are a cause of disruption of the real estate business. Climate change is creating right now, and we expect will continue to create significant risks, but also opportunities for business in a diverse number of ways, opportunities that we have to know how to take. Moreover, we also learn every day that the building sector is central in the journey towards net zero, responsible for 36% of GHG emissions and about 40% of energy consumed. Building stock is also highly energy inefficient, with an average building renovation rate which is below 1% each year within the European Union. On the financial side, we know that significant investments are also required to move real estate towards the net zero across the transitions. So the journey is very complex. Investors made and are confirming every year, also at the Conference of Parties, their commitments towards the climate neutrality 2050, and therefore decarbonization and the achievement of higher energy efficiency is now a must, is on the agenda. We can't get back from that. We don't want to get back from that. But we also know that decarbonization investments are front-loaded. This means that we have to inject our efforts the sooner the better, well before 2050, well before hopefully 2030, in order to stay in line with the Paris goals. Data is a key element. Data requires solid climate intelligence, supporting the transition. This is the way that we can measure and implement the transition path towards 2050. So if we want to summarize the key steps for our journey towards net zero, we know that first we have to be able to measure and disclose, and we know that data form the basis for measurement and disclosure. Data is key for allowing us then to measure our progress, to set targets, and to prepare for the future actions. Target settings required today, we know, we're required to be aware of the sectoral decarbonization path. So we know that we have to refer to science, and there is a framework which we know is called science-based targets, which provides for science-based benchmark for most of the business sectors and industries. Once that we have set targets, we have to develop our own strategy, which is no doubt based on the characteristics of our portfolios. And development strategy means mainly transition planning. So we need to understand that the challenge is in the transition. Sustainability is easy to think about because it's the final point, the end point, but the real challenge within the challenge is the decarbonization plan within our strategy. And last but not least, we need to take action. And take action means to be aware about what are the products that we can include in our transition plan, and the services available and solution that we can access to on the markets. It might be financial, technological, whatever is able to create considerable climate impacts and has the ability to be upscaled as a potential. So climate risks and opportunities are embedded into any transition. We know that entering into transition, we have to cope with risks, which comes from the policy and legal updates, which are related to the new technologies or to new directions taken by the markets. But also our reputation. We don't have to forget that our reputation is a key risk that we have to mitigate and manage every day in our decision making. On the opportunity side, whatever we do has to allow us to access to resource efficiency and to be able to achieve and get in touch with greener energy sources, and also to sell new products, to provide new services, and to enter into new markets. These are all opportunities that the transition is bringing, and we have to be ready to take. Resilience, last but not least, is a key point that will allow us to build longer-term sustainable value in our business if we are able to manage and to put at the service of our strategy. All these risks and opportunities create a financial impact. So we know that at the end, whatever we do is creating or destroying value through income, through cash flow, through value of our enterprise, of our assets, of our portfolio. So this is the context. Let's now look into the role that we expect the governor plays, and which are the responsibilities and complexities that a board has to face every day. Paolo was referring earlier to the sense of urgency in real estate, which is central in the transition. So the real estate has moved, the climate change challenge in the real estate industry has moved to the top of the agenda of the boards. Responsibility of the boards is no doubt to reevaluate and future-proof the value of the portfolios, securing a continuous capacity building and fostering investors' engagement, which is key. But at the same time, board has to work to reduce the footprint of portfolio securing the continuous alignments with the above identified transition plan. In terms of updating responsibilities, so the boards are expected to ensure that these risks and opportunities are addressed. The vision of the board, the updated vision of the board, is fundamental for addressing these risks posed by the climate change and to ensure that the transition is delivered smoothly towards a low carbon economy. We need to be aware that every decision made, that every action taken will impact how climate change accelerates or slows down. We are directly responsible for the speed of our transition plan towards neutrality, climate neutrality. And climate change, at the same time, will drive the risks and opportunities. So all this framework is completely linked, and we have direct responsibility in the success of this. So governance is a central building block of all these contexts. Through governance, we can achieve effective climate risks and opportunity management, and effective climate governance allow us to at least make climate-informed strategic decisions, manage climate risks, establish and track climate-related metrics, and set our targets, short, medium, or long-term targets. But we were saying together a few minutes ago that the challenge is not easy. On the one hand, no doubt, climate challenge can be seen as a simple issue, or simply another issue that the board has to cope with, and the board must address with the same rigor as any other board's responsibility. But on the other hand, we know that climate change is a completely new and complex issue that entails coping with the scientific, microeconomic, and policy matters across a broad time scales, and especially beyond the natural board terms. Indeed, we also said that there is today still limited practical guidance available to help boards in understanding the role and addressing these risks and opportunities. So the challenge is really not easy for our boards. The complexities can be depicted through three main dimensions. The first dimension is the competing of the priorities. Climate competes with all the other risks that must be addressed in the boards. Boards, therefore, have limited time and capacity to equally review and address all these strategic topics. The second dimension is about the complexity itself of the climate change. Climate change is a complex and by nature systemic issue. The risks are diverse and are often uncertain and not yet visible today to our boards. This makes the climate challenge extremely difficult to manage. The third dimension of the complexity can be summarized as the short-term horizon and focus. Companies, on the one hand, are under constant pressure to deliver short-term investors' expectation results, but on the other hand, climate change poses longer-term risks that extend beyond the consideration of the typical business plan cycle. So that's the role. And now, how can we help moving from ambition to action? General governance, we said, is not necessarily sufficient for effective board governance today. We observe that many boards are struggling to address the risks and opportunity in a holistic way, which is keeping the macro view on the whole, which is very complicated. So how we can suggest to cope with this new challenge? We can suggest, first of all, starting from updating the board agenda. This is our first responsibility. Board of directors shall adopt tools to steer climate risks and opportunities, shall increase director climate awareness, embeds climate considerations into board structures and processes, and should to integrate a complete navigation compass towards the net zero 2050, which is a very long journey. So we need to rely on a daily tool that can drive us toward this final goal, and ensure to continuously work to mitigate the risks and exploit the opportunities of the climate change posed by the business. So don't forget that transition is made both by risks and opportunities as well. So this is a great opportunity for us to create resilience to risks, but also to create value through exploiting the new opportunities posed by the transition. So where to start? So I tried to list very simple 4 initial key questions that we can raise to our board. First question, do we understand the full emission impact of our business? We know that we can rely on several frameworks to try to find an answer to this question. The general adopted and recognized framework is the GHG, and the GHG tells us that we have to understand scope 1, scope 2, and scope 3 emissions in our framework. So this is very important as a starting point. The second question is entering into our business. Do we know the carbon footprint of our portfolios? So we move from the macro into the micro of our business, of our portfolios. It's very important that we understand what the carbon footprints and the GHG emission generated by our portfolios in terms of all the usage that we do of the resources. The third question is looking around ourselves. Do we have a clear understanding of who are our key stakeholders? We don't have to forget that whatever we do, the decision that we make every day or action that we take have a direct impact or are directly linked to the stakeholders that we interact every day around. So we need to learn and we need to know very, very precisely who are our stakeholders and to engage every day with them. The fourth question is, do we have access to the most updated retrofitting technology and know-how? If we have to inject capital expenditures, if we have to do our maximum efforts every day to move through the transition toward the net zero, we need to use and access to the best technology and best know-how, because that's the only way that we can spend our money and ensure for our shareholders and stakeholders that our returns on investments of sustainability and transition is maximized. So the challenge is open. Now it's all up to us understand and share between us what are the next steps. Thank you very much. Paolo, back to you.
Thank you, Alfredo, very much for your very clear and effective presentation. Much food for thought, but I would like to pass it to the panelists. And so I hand over to Raffaele.
Thank you, Paola.
Thank
you, Paola. Here I am.
The introduction of the panelists.
Thank you, Paola. Thank you, Alfredo. I invite our people attending the webinar to ask questions. There is a chat open. We would like really to answer your questions. I see a lot of you attending the seminar. We're quite happy about this. And now we move to our roundtable. Our roundtable is the view from investors and headhunters on the topic of this webinar. And I believe Alfredo has given us a very good introduction, but now we move to the ground, if I can say so, to what really our business people think about this topic. Paolo has already introduced the member of our roundtable, but we'll mention them again. We have Benedetta Conticelli, that is our managing director at Krylos and also the CEO of Land of Fashion. We have Kelly Russell, that is head of sustainability and communication at Coima. And we have Maria Buttiglieri, that is executive director at Russell Reynolds. And we'll hand the floor to Benedetta. Thank you.
Hello, thank you, Raffaele, for the introduction. Good morning to everyone. As Raffaele said, I have this double role, and I am CEO of a property management company, which is owned directly by Blackstone Funds that manages 5 outlets. And I'm also MD of Krylos. Krylos is a primary firm in the fund management industry and the real estate advisory. And it manages basically more than 11 billion of asset under management with 66 funds. And it partners with basically more than 35 national and international investors. Sorry, if we can just move to the next page. Thank you. This just to say that this panel of investors helps us to have a feeling and a view of what are the investors' approach now towards the sustainability topics. And as a fund management company, we have the responsibility of driving value to investors. Next page, thank you. In driving value, clearly our investors want to make sure that there's profitability, that there's long-term growth. Now, what we have seen is that they're slightly moving towards a different approach. So investors understand that they're looking for ideas that are not just for businesses, but also for environment and for people. So they are understanding basically that the long-term value is not in spite of, but it becomes a result of what are the sustainability investments. So this means that when ESG policies are properly adopted, we see real financial performances, increases of these financial performances in investments. And this is also the reason why now investors are starting to consider environmental topics and matters in all the process of the investment. So starting from the due diligence to the acquisition, to the management of the portfolio, up to its dismissal. Until, let's say, a short time ago, there was this myth, next page, thank you. There was this myth that ethics and finance could not actually work together because there was this conviction that investments in environment would lead to weak returns. Actually, we know that it's not anymore the case, and investors are starting to understand this. So they understand that there's, first of all, a direct impact on exactly the cash flow. So we have listed here some of the important ways in which the ESG activities investments impact on cash flow. So first of all, it facilitates the top line growth. So clearly, if a company has a sustainable product, this attracts B2B customers, B2C, helps better access to resources, to financing. It reduces costs. So it's obvious to say that when there is a proper management of the energy consumption, or you reduce your water intake, or you basically manage unnecessary waste, you reduce your cost. You minimize your regulatory and legal interventions. So basically you reduce the risk of enforcement actions. You avoid to incurring penalties, and you can easily obtain some government subsidies. It helps to motivate your employees, to boost motivation, and it helps you to attract talents through greater social credibility. And obviously it helps optimizing investment and capital expenditures by allocating capital in long-term investments that pay off and that pay back in time, and avoid to have extra costs, for example, for environmental issues. So what is happening? Still, we're not there, but we understand that, as Alfredo mentioned before, investors and companies are starting to understand that sustainability has to be part of the strategy, of the firm's strategy. It's becoming a priority, and board need to put in their agenda sustainability as a priority, because they understand that actually, first of all, it protects the value of portfolios. So it's not a matter of only increasing the value of portfolios, but it's a matter of avoiding to lose value of portfolios. It strengthens the reputation, which is very important. It increases the confidence of the investor. It helps the board members to challenge continuously the strategy of the company. It manages the risks. As Alfredo said before, we have business risks, we have physical risks, we have the whole transition risks. It is necessary to optimize transition investments. As we said, it helps saving through energy efficiency, but most important is because this contribution is becoming important for the climate effects that are really happening. So these recent socio-economic changes, the fact that, next slide, thank you. The fact that we have had the consequences from the pandemic situation, the fact that the digital and the IT is evolving so rapidly, the whole geopolitical scenario is pushing boards to progress and to evolve in their characteristics in order to cope with this highly complex environment. So what is necessary? What are the characteristics, as Alfredo said, that move from ambition to action that boards need to have? Basically, boards need to have a proper balanced composition. So diversity, inclusion, gender equality, both quantitative and quality composition of the board is the first step for a good governance that helps to meet regulatory laws and allows to drive the company in the right direction. Independency, board members need to be independent. Now, recently it seems that the legislation today actually is setting the scene in order that, in a way that board members are, for the majority, independent. The requirement for independency is still discussed, but basically anyway, more than 60% is the outcome of a Deloitte research of the board members seem to be independent. It is more and more important that the board members have a strong expertise in order to bring to the table different views and to be able to analyze in depth specific topics and specific departments and businesses. And it seems that our profiles such as digital, cybersecurity, and sustainability are the profiles that now are more required, or anyway need to be part of the board. Sustainability seems to be, ESG profiles seem to cover about 40%, 45% of these boards. Board members need to be effectively participating to the company matters. It's important to have responsiveness of the board. Obviously, board members need to provide accountability and transparency, and it's important that there's efficiency and effectiveness of governance. So in general, what we're seeing today, that there's still a long path to reach exactly this kind of theoretical compositions, but investors are getting closely more and more aware to this. ESG procedures and policy are becoming more part of all the investment procedures, and boards are adjusting in order to provide the proper governance. Thank you.
Thank you, Benedetta. I will move now to Maria. Benedetta has given us the view from the investor, but the selection process is made by headhunters. Maria can tell us how the process works. Thank you, Maria.
Hello, thank you very much for inviting me. I'm Maria Grazia Piglieri, and I work for Russell Reynolds Associates, international executive search firm. I'm here to analyze and share with you our thoughts on the topic we have already discussed, which is ESG leaders, trends in boards in real estate companies. So going on with the presentation, next slide. Okay, the landscape. We have already touched a lot of these topics, but just to summarize again. So ESG today is a must, is everywhere, is in all the companies considered a need. And today, ESG in a way synthesizes this dimension that would look contradictory as the outcomes from financials and social. Today is the mainstream approach. A few years ago, ESG professionals were seen as a bonus, an added bonus on the senior leadership team. So not necessary. But today, the current years, the last few years, we could see these profiles as non-negotiable assets for any organization that wants to compete and want to present in the market. And above all, ESG standards are being necessary and a must for the real estate sector. Below three key elements that has been recently discussed again in the Climate Week in New York, end of September, that has been already discussed during our panel, but again, 40% of global greenhouse gas emissions come from real estate assets. Secondly, cost. How cost impact real estate assets, which is energy mainly. And then competition. Competition on two ways. Landlords are competing for the best tenants, and of course, competition is based on funding. How can real estate companies continue to raise capital if they are viewed, considered as a dirty investment? How pension funds could continue to invest in real estate if the real estate is considered like not a long-term investment, sustainable investment? So next page. What we have summarized in this slide is the state of the art. So we have considered real estate public companies globally. And we have considered 63 public real estate firms, and 60 of them have already a sustainability committee at the board level. Regarding the demographic of this board, we could see, these sustainability committees, in fact, we could see that the average age of the board members is 61, and there is quite a diversity presence represented by more than 40% of female presence in those committees. And these committees have three concept associates to sustainability, of course: risk, ethics, and governance, which are, of course, three elements highly interconnected. But going on in our presentation, we would like, next slide. Okay. In this slide, we would like to share with you our analysis regarding two clusters. And we have considered this key sector of the professional and the executive leaders and the board members in real estate companies. And you can see that today the senior ESG leaders, professional reporting to a management team, have a background in ESG that's touch 8% of their presence. And on the other hand, you could see that the present ESG board members have an ESG experience that is 40%. And generally, if you look through the ESG know-how and competence, we found that the S pillar is the highest represented. So we saw the social pillar, which means people with an experience in contribution to arts, to charitable, to educational bodies. From this slide, I think we could see a long path, as Benedetta highlighted before. It's a long path, and of course represent a distinct opportunity for improvement and a growth trend for the future boards in the real estate listed companies. Thank you for your attention, and back to Raffaele.
Thank you, Maria. Now we move to another investor, Kelly Russell from Coima, one of the key real estate investors. Please, Kelly.
Good morning, everyone. Nice to be with you today. So my name is Kelly Russell Catella, and I'm head of sustainability at Coima SGR. We are an asset manager and development manager in Italy. We manage 9 billion of assets under management, with over 80% of our portfolio that has been certified either LEED or WELL. And our mission for many years has been to incorporate environmental and sustainable impact while focusing on obviously the long-term value that our investors expect. So we really work to bring together these aspects, and we recently launched a fund that's called our Climate City Impact Fund that effectively measures both financial returns but also environmental and social returns. I think it's important to remember some of the numbers that the real estate industry is looking at. I mean, we're responsible for 40% of global emissions, with 75% of those coming from urban built environments. So I think that gives our industry a major responsibility to really rethink what our value chain is on how we create these cities, because the emergency is real. If we can go to the next slide, please. I just kind of want to recap some of the major milestones that have happened within the last 7 years regarding themes such as climate change, but also other social environmental emergencies that we're facing. I mean, in 2015, obviously during the Paris Agreement, they came out with sustainability development goals. Coima identified 8 of those and started reporting on them in the following year, of how it is that through our work, we would try to make a positive impact on the goals that have been set. 2019, the Sustainable Financial Enclosure came out. I think all of us became very aware, but Coima was the only player, or at least Italian real estate player, that in March of 2021 then complied to this regulation. And now we're actually working on all of the aspects in order to meet all of the regulatory technical standards, in order to make sure that within our board we comply to all the regulations that we adhere to. Obviously, in the meantime, carbon tax is arriving. I think that's also becoming not just a Northern Europe theme or trend that we're seeing. As I'm sure many of you are aware, it's already working into Northern Italy because it's present already in the city of Milan. And I think what the main theme that I would like to take away from this slide and communicate to everyone is that obviously this has major repercussions on how companies have to change and how the governance needs to change. And I think obviously there's big attention to data, as was stated before, because without the data, you can't understand what your impact is, but also how it is that data is then reported in a clear and transparent way. But I think there is a red flag, at least I see the effect that it has directly on my team and on our company, which is it's great that obviously we need to be working on transparently reporting all of these issues, But I think that we need to remember that as an industry, we really need to focus on taking the action and really decarbonizing our portfolio. We can't just be about reporting the emissions that we emit, but we have to figure out what it is that we're going to do to reduce them. So we move to the next slide. I'm happy to share with you how COIMA is organized. I'm sure that there are many best practices that are in the industry in this country and across Europe, but I'll just give you I'll give you our takeaway of our experience. In 2018, we formed a Sustainable Innovation Committee, which is a group of top managers that basically set the strategy for our company. We try to follow all of the major trends that are happening globally and understand how it is that then we incorporate those both at a corporate level and at a fund level within all of our operations. The Sustainable Innovation Committee, obviously through our managing director, goes directly to the board of directors. One thing that I can state about how this emergency is affecting the boards that I think is time. If I think about 5 years ago, how many times they requested my presence within a board meeting as head of sustainability, and maybe it was twice. Now I don't think that there's a single board that doesn't happen where myself or one of the technical members from the team that you see on the right side is not requested to be present, because we are constantly discussing what are the carbon emissions if we acquire this portfolio, what is our decarbonization plan in order to make sure that we agree that we reach the objectives that our company has set for us. I mean, we decided to adhere to the science-based initiative, so we are working on decarbonizing our portfolio to be below the two grade by 2030. We would like to beat that if we possibly can. So our team is very focused on these aspects. But certainly there's a time and a priority that was mentioned before that is important that the board of directors really focus on that, focus and dedicate the necessary time. Then obviously the Sustainable Committee works with all of our internal divisions, works with many external working groups. One thing that we worked on a lot over this last year is we approved a new sustainability policy that has a very detailed working plan, which we call our transition to impact plan, that goes where within our company governance, besides the board of directors, but all the way down from the managing director to individual managers, we have set personal objectives within people's managing by objectives overall framework for their year that they are working on ESGs. So one of their 5 objectives has something to do with environmental, social, or governance that goes back to how the company that takes back to the main company objectives. Our team obviously has grown over the last years. I mean, we have a substantial team, I think, for an Italian real estate company. So besides myself, we have a sustainability officer that's dedicated full time, an energy manager. Then someone came on board 2 years ago, sustainability and product innovation. And now, obviously, due to the SFDR, we have also hired a sustainability reporting system that works on a lot on reporting all the data regarding our ESG emissions in order to fill out all of the regulatory standards reporting. We are also bringing on board this year a social and governance impact manager, just because in this phase we feel like we need to reinforce both our corporate governance on ESG, but also really focus on the social impact that we want to create both as a company, but also through our outreach that we can make it through funds. So I think that this initiative of speaking today with various voices is very forward thinking, because I think we all need to focus and realize that the emergency is real. And so we really need as an industry to come together and make the changes necessary to meet the goals that we all need to meet together. Thank you.
Thank you, Kelly. We have some questions from our people. I don't know.
I see that we have a question, actually, Raffaele, from Adriano.
Yeah, the question, then I will pass to Paola, is from Adriano Bisello. The question is very, very interesting in a way, because climate change is usually seen as a cost, while probably it's an opportunity of investment, an investment specifically for the private investors with the public. Then I'm going to ask our speakers what they think about this possibility of investing and making money, not only to lose money. And probably the question is for Benedetta, Kelly, and Alfredo. I don't know if Benedetta, if you want to start with the potential answer.
Sure. Well, I think that Adriano, you have really caught the point, and thank you for this question, because actually it says it all in 2 words, because actually what you're talking about is, first of all, the fact that what we said before, it's important that the board identifies this as a priority. So clearly it has to be an item of the agenda of the board. Second, you talked about how important it is to map it, measure it, and estimate it in a scientific way. So this is the step that is necessary to be done. And then you take into consideration the fact that amongst the stakeholders that need to be aligned is basically also, and we probably never or don't talk about it enough, is the public sector. Because this is something that has to be embedded by all stakeholders, and definitely, especially in the real estate world, it's very important that cities and territories have this process and follow the process in the same way as companies do. So definitely that is challenging. I think we are noticing also in this area some improvements from the government, a sort of attention and sensitivity to this. But yes, I agree that this has to work in parallel. We see it, for example, if I put the hat of the CEO of the outlets, we see, for example, that there is a lot of work together with the municipalities that host our villages in terms of working together on how we can better manage the consumption of energies, how we can keep the doors closed of our retail shops. So yes, there is a lot of work to do, but I think that this is definitely a good point. All the stakeholders need to be aligned on this ESG objective. We need to go hand in hand.
Thank you, Benedetta. Kelly, Alfredo, I don't know if
yeah, if I can add just quickly, because I think that the question is very punctual, and the question is, how much does it cost to be sustainable? But I think we need to flip it around now and ask ourselves, how much does it cost for us not to be sustainable? So I think we're really getting into an evaluation, which is green premium against brown discount. And from our evaluations, and also proven in where we've really invested on ESG themes integrated into our funds, is that by far your green premium outweighs the risks of your brown discount. For us, there's not even discussion. We've been able to prove it by now over years. So I think it's important that everyone in the industry stops thinking about how much it costs to be sustainable, and instead think about how much it costs not to be sustainable.
I just may add, Raffaele, very quickly. The question from Adriano comes from my organization, which is very sensible, like EURAC as organizer of the Smart and Sustainable Planning for Cities, is very sensible to the matter of collaboration between private and public. So thank you for posing, Adriano. I think that I integrate and I am aligned with Benedetta and Kelly contribution. I think that to unlock the real value of this transition, private and public has to really work together. This is about finding a joint solution. Sustainability is really something which requires not to take isolated solutions. But if we are able to join the decision-making process and to take a joint solution and to make joint decisions, I think that that's the real way that we can unlock the real value of sustainability. So I think it's very important and necessary and fundamental.
Thank you, Alfredo. We have a question potential for Maria. The question is, do you feel that an ESG committee is necessary for a company that would like to list sooner or later, let's say in a few years? Do you think that ESG, an internal committee of a board of directors, is now a requirement or is an option? I don't know, Maria, if you...
No, it's not anymore an option. It's a need, it's a requirement. You need to have an ESG expert in your board. In not only real estate, but everywhere. Now we are involved in several boards evaluation and creation. We have always considered ESG member in the board. And of course, better is to have a sustainability committee to support the boards.
Thank you, Maria. I will have another question that maybe it's for Kelly and Benedetta. I feel, I mean, one of the people is asking us, you collect data, I suppose, for your company. Do you collect data through a third party, or you do it directly with your internal people?
Should I go first? Is that okay?
Yeah, please.
Okay.
Please.
We are fortunate that we have covered the supply chain, I mean, the entire, industrial chain, meaning that we invest, manage, and we also develop and property manage all of our portfolio. So we have facility property team on the ground that actually work on the direct collection of data that is then filtered into our data warehouse in order to monitor all of the emissions. Both obviously energy, water, all of the basic natural resources that have to be reported. We've taken our baseline as 2018, so this is now the 4th year that we're reporting, and we're able to understand, let's say, between last year and this year, what are the various reductions over the time frame that we've looked at. Also calculating, obviously, the decrease that happened during the pandemic because the buildings were in use.
Thank you, Kelly. I don't know if Benedetta, you would like to add something else or not.
Well, yes, I think that there's two different scenarios. As a property management company, we follow into the same case of Kelly. So we do actually store our data directly. As a Krilos, obviously, since we have different funds, this instead is then stored from the separate management companies or we rely to third parties. So it varies according to the different cases.
Thank you, Benedetta. Alfredo, Maria, I don't know if you all want to add something else or you don't have any other comment. No. Okay. I feel that we have answered the key questions that we have received. I will pass the floor to Paola for the closing remarks.
Yes, thank you, Raffaele. Actually, I had a final point maybe to discuss with our panelists, because I think we are all a little bit worried about the current landscape, the turbulency we face. And we are afraid more than a bit that this situation might slow down all the efforts which have been made so far and which have been planned for, let's say, the climate change governance and the net zero economy targets achievements. We know that, for instance, in Italy, the new government is already planning a reduction in tax incentives on building renovation. So what shall we expect? Actually, are you worried as I am about that, or do you see that we will nevertheless go straight in the right direction? So if you have a quick conclusion, a quick remark to do on that, we have a few minutes more. Thanks. I don't know, Benedetta, I'd like to start.
Yeah, yes, very briefly. I just think that we are in a no return process. I think that there's no way back. This is the direction. It is important how fast we proceed. Certainly, this is one of our most difficult moments, socioeconomic, geopolitical. There's a lot of uncertainty, and Italy has also changes of government. So there's a lot of variables that have impact. But I really believe that companies, investors, properties are really starting to become very much aware of this issue, and I think that it's now a direction that everybody is starting to take. It's a no return process.
Thank you. Kelly, would like to add something?
If I could add, Paola, I mean, obviously we're very concerned. Our hope, though, is that the emergency will create a faster ecological transition because of the emergency. So again, we are in a position where since 100% of our energy is produced either on site or through renewable energy, our portfolio is in a good position, obviously, whenever we're looking to face the energy crisis that will be happening over, let's say, at least next year. I hope that the government will take into consideration serious incentives so that this will facilitate the ecological transition, so people will be allowed to install what's necessary on site and off site for them to be able to produce renewable energies. And this needs to happen through incentives. It needs to be done intelligently. It needs to be done quickly. But I think that if this crunch, let me call it like this crunch emergency is used as an addition to facilitate and make things happen faster, then I think that we could be in a stronger position in a 3 to 5 year time.
Thank you, Kelly. Maria Grazia and Alfredo, one word each, I think.
Yes, very quickly. We still see an increase of requests of profiles, both at the executive level and board level on ESG matters. So I think it could be a slowdown, but there is a one-way path.
Thank you.
Paolo, I think that the general sense of urgency and concern for the framework, political, economical framework, won't change the challenge. As Benedetta was saying, is one way sustainability towards net zero. What will change indeed is the way that we approach the challenge, because we are becoming more severe with ourselves in terms of tools that we have to adopt to make the challenge win and succeed. So this means also a focus on governance, focus on the way that we approach every day our duties and tasks.
Okay, thank you all. I think we have almost run out of time. So I really thank you all for being here, for sharing our views with us. I hope that the audience enjoyed this short webinar, and see you in the next session. Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.